You want something?
After my coffee,
okay.
It'll freshen my breath.
Let's take a breath. Hey, today I'm having coffee.
Yes,
at Peaberry.
Rare for me, but when I do drink coffee.
So you put me on to Peaberry.
Yes. Which I got put on to Peaberry by my friend Cindy, who owns Coco Andre. Because she's a small business owner here in Oak Cliff as well, and they sell their chocolate here, and that's how they got connected. So I came, and we've hosted a pop-up here before, and yeah, I just love that they have oat milk as an option and support the plant-based community. So it's pretty awesome.
Oh wow, that was a lot of good there. So speaking of small business, I'm here with my great friend Chanise.
I'm excited to be here with you, Juan. You know, I love talking to you.
We met at a small business.
That's true.
We did. We met at I Am the Juice Place.
Yes.
Shout out to Anna.
Shout out.
And heck, we've known each other. How long has that been?
That was like 2 years ago.
And that was cool because it was on some bring the community together to talk about different topics. And we cosmically clicked.
Yeah. There was literally no reason for me to be at that thing. I really think I just came because I was supposed to meet you.
Oh, wow. That's funny. That's cool. Oh, I'm so glad. Because, see, a lot of times that's how it happens. You know, you just, you're open to receive. You know, there's that one thing that could have been a block, but you're just like, well, I'm just going to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, you know, that following that gut intuition and gut feeling can lead to what people always say, like, I'm trying to attract it. I'm trying to attract it. But, like, so somehow I attracted meeting her.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was funny because as I was sitting there, like, listening to you talk, because I think we were kind of, like, sharing our experiences and, like, things. It was going into the new year. So it was literally 2 years ago, January, I think.
Yeah.
And it was like, what are you leaving behind? What are you taking with you? And like when I was listening to you talk about your experience and what you were taking with you and leaving behind, I was like, gosh, I've never listened to a man be so in tune with his emotions. Like, not just on, like, I think a lot of times we think of emotions in, like, a feminine way, you know, like, it's like, oh, he's feeling sad or he's feeling whatever, but it was like, no, overall, in a very holistic way, you were very in tune with what you were feeling about that transition, and you articulated it very well, and that was not so much impressive to me as much as it was like it kind of showed me that was the capability of men. Like, I know, like, as sad as that sounds, but it was just like, wow. And so I wanted to talk to you more and kind of like see how you had gotten to that place where you were able to express that, or if that was something that you just always naturally had. And
oh my God, Meditating and me are both about to cry.
And since then, I mean, I have learned, that's like the first lesson I learned through you and from you and with you. And since then, I mean, every time that we connect, it's just like, you know, so yeah, that was definitely, I think, a destination for me to be able to connect with you. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's wild. That's wild that you say that. Thank you, first of all. Thank you so much. Like, I had no idea. 2 years later, I had no idea she ever thought that. Which is cool that you're telling me now. Now that you say all that, I think back, and as you were saying that, I'm reflecting on what I was going through. And what I was going through was like, oh, I'm the new kid on the block in this health and wellness scene, and I was trying to face meeting people from walks of life that I usually wasn't exposed to growing up, but it's what I'm into now. And that could have been a block for me. Like I say, I was just like, I'm going because you just never know.
Yeah.
I just had an open mind too, and that's what was so cool, because at the time, like, that was the need I was trying to fill. I was just like, oh, it's cool that I have all these new people in my life on social media, but like, where are they in real life?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you were one of the first people that I was like, oh, I can identify with her more so in a lot of ways than a lot of people that I'm used to knowing. Like I've gone further than a lot of the friends that I used to have. So, and I was like, well, where are these new friends that I need to interact with in my own community, because I don't know them, and
Yeah.
you know, I was like clueless as to where they were going to come from. But like, I showed up, you know, because a lot of times that's what people say to me. They're like, just show up.
Yeah.
Just show up. So that was my way of just showing up and see what happened. Like, because when you told me your story, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, this is not a trendy vegan.
Yeah.
Like, this is like someone who, like, your journey was similar to mine in is that, you know, like, because honestly, first, when I got into like plant-based eating, like real talk, like I'm gonna talk my shift, you know, like I was just like, I just want to lose weight, I just want to look good. Like, I didn't have any idea that I was gonna come into this place where I was like, dang, I feel better, I think better.
I don't think that people understand, to just interject really quick, that you mentally lose weight as well. Like, it's not, it's like so connected, and a lot of times, like, when we go at it just for physical, it's like, yeah, it does have those impacts at first, right? But it's like another side effect of it is that mentally you can't help but like make a shift, and people will counteract that and be like, I've met some rude vegans, and it's like, yeah, you will, because 9 times out of 10 they're eating like extremely processed foods. They're not necessarily like approaching it in a way where we did, where it's like, I want to learn about plants as medicine, I want to learn about, you know, like eating this way in a way that's going to not just ethically, you know, work for the environment and morally for the animals, but in a way that's going to like give me life and like help me. And so there is just a bit of a difference, and I don't think that people always see that, and so they kind of like clump us into a group as a whole, where it's like sometimes veganism can and plant-based eating can lead to that path of enlightenment, you know, naturally for some, and for others it doesn't, and that's fine. But that's just how the world works, right? You have conscious rap and you got regular rap. You know, like
right.
That's just how it is. But it just inadvertently will, if you allow it, if you allow that openness to continue, because you've opened your mind so much to just your palate, which food is like such a, it's so important to us for so many reasons besides just the basic nourishment. It's like familial, it's cultural, it's racial sometimes. It's like so many things to us, and so it's so hard to change it, right? The same way it is to...
Like, I've had my my ups and downs with... I don't even want to call them ups and downs. I just want to call them...
ebbs and flows.
Ebbs and flows and learning experiences of... So, hey, who is this person I'm talking to? And we just went straight into topics.
Yeah.
So, the plant-based pop-up that she owns, let's talk to them about
Electrick Kitchen.
your passion. Like, how did you go from idea to embodying your passion, and like, how did all that come about? Tell them about you. Like, what even got you into all this stuff?
Long story short, so back in 2016, I always started 2016, but since you're my people, I'm gonna start before then, and give you the real tea. So, because I think you can handle it. You can handle it. But not just that, you can understand it. So you know how like sometimes you just know, like you have that knowing, you're like, things aren't gonna be like this forever, and not from a way of like faith, like blind faith. Like sometimes we'll tell ourselves that as like a coping thing, like things won't be this way forever. But like I would have moments in my life, in my like young adult life, youth, I guess I'm still technically a young adult, but like youth, late teenage, early 20s life, where I would like read an article, and at this point I was anywhere between 300 to 330 pounds. That was like where I've stayed. And I had severe rheumatoid arthritis that I was diagnosed with extremely young. And I was on lots of medications for that, but I would like take them, but I would feel really conflicted about it, so I'd stop taking them. And so it was always like this thing where I knew, like, just in my gut, my spirit was telling me, like, this medicine is not the way. Like, it's going to ruin you before it like, my symptoms from the medicine were always worse. The side effects were always worse than the actual disease that I had. My weight, it didn't matter how healthy I ate, how often I worked out. I mean, I had to literally work out at the gym 2 hours twice a day, 6 days a week, and eat like the cleanest to even lose like 30 pounds. And for somebody coming from where I was being that heavy, it shouldn't have taken that much. It shouldn't have been that. And so I remember like reading articles. I read an article about a lady that went raw vegan and had a lot of the same issues that I did. And she was like, as soon as I did it, my life like completely changed. I got off all my medications and all this stuff. And so I knew, I kind of tucked away in my mind that at some point, like I said, I feel like this is going to have to be me. And it was just like one of those weird things that I was like, okay, so as my disease progressed, and as my weight gain progressed, I was really wanting to get away from this medicine. But every time I went to the doctor, I was getting worse prognosis and they were putting me on another prescription. And so I was like, gosh, what can I do? And my then girlfriend, now wife, was like persistent in looking at, like, at the time Instagram had just really started popping and hashtags had just become a thing. So she was looking up different hashtags for like natural remedies and that kind of stuff, and came across somebody who did kind of like what is it? Hey, you're the yoga instructor, yoga teacher, where it's like easy flow, like but repetitive yoga movements.
Okay.
So it's like they take some of it, but they take yoga poses and then do the movements repetitively, like, you know, like 10 to 15 times each, like very, very slowly. And so he was doing that out of a studio here. And at the time we lived in Houston, and we would Skype with him and do these workouts. And because she knew that I needed something that was going to be easy on my joints, but also would like get me moving, get my blood flow moving and all those things. And he was like, I'd feel really great after the workouts, but it wasn't long enough, you know, like it was like, oh, I feel really good now, but then I'd wake up the next morning and be stiff again. My joints would be locked up. And so at one point he suggested, he was like, I'm doing some research and I think you need to cut meat. And he was like, specifically, you know, like the big ones that they tell us, red meat, pork, you know, that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, you know, I don't eat a lot of that anyway, so that was easy. And then he came back a couple weeks later and was like, I think you need to cut out, you know, dairy and fish and you know, poultry and eggs and all that. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, let's do a little tour of your fridge. And he was like, let's see what you have in there. And I thought I ate, you know, really relatively healthy. And he was like, I had a jar of pomegranate juice. And he was like, so he told me to read the ingredients. And he was like, that's concentrate. Everything's cooked out of that juice. You know, they add sugar to it and they rebottle it. And I was like, dang, you know, not realizing how much sugar I was getting, how much like, corn syrup and, you know, like just all of that stuff. And I was like, gosh, I'm really adding a lot of this to my diet, not knowing it and thinking that I'm really healthy. And so he was like, I want you to cut all these things out. And then he was like, have you ever heard of Dr. Sebi? Because I'm really doing a lot of research on him and I think his diet would heal you. And I was like, oh gosh, you know, that's a real big commitment. And who is Dr. Sebi? That's that crazy man who was with Lisa Left Eye Lopez, and, you know, like all these things that you like seen, you know, perpetuated in the media. And I was like, I don't know about that. But I did it. I tried it for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks I lost like 18 pounds. I felt better. I was waking up faster. I was like having more mobility. And I was like, gosh, I know this is the answer. But I'm a food addict. I think, you know, most of us are. It's already, that's just how we've been conditioned. It's in the food. We're made that way. You know, it's really difficult and it's hard because that's the only drug that you have to have. You know, you can't live without it. And And so we would try it, and then I would backslide, you know, and I'd be like, gosh, well, I'm going to a birthday party at a Mexican restaurant. What am I going to eat? And, you know, so then it was like they ordered queso, and I was in it. There's birthday cake come out, I had to eat it. Like, no self-control and, like, no understanding of how important it was, because diet culture had really taught me, like, it's about the weight, and you can always pick it back up another way. But this was about really honoring my body and saying, like, no, I want to live. Like, I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm trying to lose disease. And when I finally stuck with it, I lost 146 pounds in like 9 months, give or take, and got off all my prescriptions. And I was like, oh shit, this is the answer, like, for me. And I had a lot of people that were coming to me and were like, how, of course, when they see the weight loss, they're so shocked by it, you know, and they're like, oh wow, how'd you do it? How'd you lose all that weight? How'd you lose all that weight? And I was like, yeah, I lost all this weight, but more importantly, like, I feel incredible. Like, I was the girl that was struggling to put a seatbelt on at one point, you know, and it's like, I feel incredible. I have, you know, mobility in my joints, and I'm able to do things I wasn't able to do before. And so it was kind of that I had fallen in love with the results, but also with the process of cooking the food. And I knew that a lot of people struggle with a plant-based diet was the fact that they can't cook. You know, it's hard to acclimate. It's hard to switch out and, like, get creative, especially when we're so used to eating the same things over and over and over again. And so I decided to start a meal prep company called Electrick Kitchen, and I made food for people and did delivery, kind of like Snap Kitchen, like pre-made meals, and we did breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I loved that, but I realized that I didn't have as much access to people, because you do have to still be able to afford a service like that. And that's not accessible for everybody, or people aren't, you know, super open to always trying that. But we got an opportunity to do a lunch and learn where we brought in food, we catered at a corporate space. And I got to talk to them about my journey and feed them, and I loved that. I loved interacting with people, and from there it was like, okay, I want to kind of do this more. I want to bring food to people and be able to, like, no judgment, try this bomb food. If you love it, it's vegan. If you know, if you're vegan, you can try it, you know, like, or you can taste it too, like, you don't have to miss out. And so that's how we started doing pop-ups, and now we're just going from there. So in a nutshell.
No, that's so beautiful, because, you know, I mean, just to hear how all of that grew organically as a seed, like the seed was your need, and now you can take your journey and experience and share that with people who, you know, you were there. Like, hey.
And I am there still.
Yeah. Right.
You know, because it's still a struggle.
Right. Like, our journeys are really similar, but mine was, and a couple of things I thought as you were saying that was, one, when I got into the yoga community, you know, I was intimidated because I'm looking at all these people on Instagram and I'm like, well, dang, you know, look at y'all in all y'all's glory with all these poses. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was intimidating at first, but I stuck in the yoga studio and I got another side experience that actually just took all that away and made me realize what real yoga was about. But one thing that I remember posting one time to a fellow yogi was like, what if, like, people say, oh, wow, you know, like yoga challenges. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, yoga challenges were hot. Mm-hmm. Day one, day, and like, look at my transformation. And one thing that I said one time was like, what if we could show people how much our mind has changed? Mm. Not necessarily how much our bodies have changed, but how the transformation that, because that's something people can't see. Yeah. And my sickness, or I don't even want to call it a sickness, but my uniqueness is a experience that people can't see. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, people called it mental illness at one point. I'm calling it mental uniqueness, and these include things like they've been labeled as like schizophrenia, bipolar, clinically depressed, mm-hmm. You know, all these uniquenesses that acquire a special kind of treatment and translation to be able to integrate. Because usually, we were not allowed to integrate. We were put in like a hospital, like, you see the movies, like the old school movies, like put your head underwater, like give you some kind of crazy, like, pick parts of your brain, hoping you fix, but thank God that, like, so when I had come across, so I was, what's funny is, like, same thing with me from a guy's point of view. So I was like going to an Equinox gym. You're talking about $150, and everyone in there looks like they straight just walked out of a Nike ad,
Yeah.
But I'm this guy that's like, I'm not going to get intimidated by it. I want to see what I can learn from it, what I mean? And I was there, and on their blog, I was looking at this author, and the way she wrote everything was so compassionate, and it made me, like, once I started following all the recipes, I remember, thank God I had like the time, because most people don't have the time to sit there and actually, I know a lot of people don't have the time or budget to throw away everything in their fridge.
Yeah,
start all
absolutely.
over.
Well,
to have the time to actually cook these new foods.
Actually, and I've been like struggling with that, because I used to think that, and then I had to like get real about other aspects of my life, because
true.
I
That
I was like,
with
I
it.
have the time to do, I felt like, I'm fortunate to have the time, but it really is like,
But I'm saying, I know that for a fact. I had some resources at the time that allowed me to do that.
Absolutely.
So, and I agree with you. So, but what I was experiencing was like, I was like, yo, I didn't leave out of town.
Yeah.
But I realized I feel like I'm out of town because I'm going to the grocery store. And even though this is the same grocery store I've been going to for years, I'm going to places that I've never even tried to, like, been in the store. Or, like, this is the first time I actually, like, I don't know what arugula is.
Yeah.
And I had to buy all these things. And it was just like, I was having, like, I felt like I had left my city. And I'm like, the funny thing was, it's like, it's always been in my face, but not in my face, because I wasn't looking for it. And then I had that relationship with food, because what had happened was, me too, throughout my life, I've always experienced having to deal with medication for my mind, and that's very stressful, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, man, I just saw a lot from working in both situations. Like, one of my biggest powers was that God blessed me with was that I was able to tell people for a small portion of my life, was like, hey man, this clinic, the one that we're both in right now, I know I work here, but I used to get my meds from here. I just have to get my meds from somewhere else now, because I can't get it from the same clinic I work at. But, I was in that, I've been in your shoes position, and I realized how helpful that is to people, that they want someone that they can identify with.
Absolutely.
To guide them, and not hear it from someone who, although they mean well, hasn't been in their shoes.
Yeah. And I think that, like, that's why, especially right now, I'm glad that, like, a trending topic is, like, representation matters. But I think we limit that so much to, like, race a lot, and it's like, representation matters. We want to see more Latinx on screen. We want to see more blacks on screen. We want to see more Asians on screen. But at the same time, it's like, we need to be, like, the same thing with, like, disabled people and seeing them on screen or on runways. And the same way with what you're saying, these invisible uniquenesses, which I love, because that's also teaching us to change the way that we frame the context and the words that we use behind these things, and words matter, right?
Well, I'm saying, I remember, when I used to be there, and people, this was their first time, my job was to pull out a sheet to show them a bunch of negative symptoms.
Yeah.
And
they're already feeling that way.
They're already feeling that way.
Yeah, and it affirms the negative, rather than, like, giving them this is my opportunity to have a fresh start, or to really, like, get a hold on something so I can live the part of my life that I really want to live.
But you know what? That's why. So there was a book that always stayed in my subconscious that I always wanted to experience, and when I had this opportunity, so there was a doctor, and this is a field of medicine, they call it orthomolecular. So ortho means the right, and molecular means molecules. So it focuses on, there's all these studies on how food helped. They did side-by-side studies. A group ate a certain kind of foods, B group ate a certain kind of foods, and these people had like schizophrenia, and they started realizing how many symptoms were reduced, less frequent episodes and things like that, and it led them to start realizing, oh, it's the chemistry of the food that people eat. And that's what I started realizing when I was eating all these new foods. I was like, holy wow, like
you were experiencing some of those benefits.
Yeah, I was like, man, that's crazy how, because at one point, I know for a lot of people this might be common sense not to do, but at one point in my life,
what is he about to say?
No, so at one point in my life, there's like, I'm just saying, there's this one point in my life where like, a symptom that's very stigmatized and infamous with bipolar is mania. You're going fast, talking fast, got 20 ideas, you think you can do 25 of them all at the same time, and for me, I was like, I don't like that because I'll get in trouble. So I need to focus. So what did I do? Start drinking tons of coffee, thinking that would make me focus when it was making me more manic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then, once I started, being more cooperative with treatments and things like that, I remember it was the way I was spoken to too. Like this woman was like, this doctor, I love her to death. She said, what if you just tried getting more sleep and see what it did for you? It wasn't like she was telling me what to do. She put the power in my hands.
Yeah, an option.
And because that's one thing that the bipolar experience has a part of, is that we get this rush of like, oh, I'm just so on and lit and I can just go for days without sleep. That's the way it feels. But logic has, so without going too deep, basically you can't pump the brakes with your logic. So there are no brakes. So you're going so fast that you don't even realize how fast you're going.
You just gotta crash.
You just gotta crash. Exactly, to stop. And that's what creates the problem, or the setback, or whatever you want to call it. But I noticed that with food, with the right food, orthomolecular, my body, my mind was able to just process things more. And then I got so much more in tune with nature. I remember when I first started, I was literally like, there was this point where I was just looking at all these like seeds and nuts and grains, and I was just staring at them, and I was just like, I get it. Like, I'm from the earth, you're from the earth, you help me, I help you. Like, I had this like epiphany with like a bag of homemade trail mix. Like, I made this, I picked this out, I put this together. Like, no one told me where this came from. I know where this came from. Like, I have all the power, and it made me feel so empowered because I was like, man, it feels good to, like, I know exactly where my food came from. It wasn't just given to me in a box or a bag. And it's like, this is how you live. Like, no, this is how I chose to live. And what I choose to put in my body. Like, I felt like empowered for once, through food.
Absolutely.
So I gained this new relationship with food from going to the grocery store, and then, I had to go to like the Asian supermarket to find certain things. So it was just like a journey. And it turned into fun versus like, I don't want to have to do this. You know what I mean?
Perspective. It's perspective. And I think that's where a lot of people like find that they hiccup the most in this. And I mean, unpopular opinion, hashtag, like that's sometimes like what happens with this. And that's why I like, even with me, I find myself like floating back and forth between like vegan and plant-based, and like wanting to be kind of like all-encompassing and
we opened up a dirty bag.
Accessible, I know, real dirty, but somebody has to do it.
I might have to take more of this just to calm down, because I am the bull in the tea shop. Go ahead.
It's difficult for people to go down this road and not. You hear so many people that have either not been able to stick with it because of societal pressures or health measures that they feel like, I need to go back to certain dietary needs or dietary, I guess, additions because of certain ailments. And And so it's like once we get so caught up in the politics of all of it and so far away from like our own individual needs, like everybody, we want that like down to the seed, down to the core of ourselves, and like knowing ourselves and understanding that like we have to be empowered to make those choices, and also come to a place of understanding, of like true understanding with our own bodies and what we need and how we have to eat. And this is definitely not a rant about like incorporating a 32-ounce ribeye back into your diet. Absolutely not. But it is about coming to a place of being able to eat more intuitively and eat from a place of greater understanding outside of just like the physical nourishment of like, oh, this has fiber in it, so it's going to be good for my digestion, and more
but
of a place
you vibrate more higher than most people because of all them plants you eat.
Absolutely. So me personally, or just in general?
You gotta give the baby pro tip for how, okay, so give a pro tip on how you found compassion for your own personal experience with societal or family pressure.
Compassion for myself, you know, like
what are some things you faced, like with family? Were they like, here comes Miss Vegan, or you always think you know what, or like what did you face? Give me some examples. How did you find compassion for them?
You know, people, at first I was super irritated. Like, I would always be, like, VMS instead of PMS. Like, I'd be the vegan person that's there that's, like, so irritated because it's like, no, I don't just eat a bunch of sides. You know, like, it would just be like, ugh! And it's because, you know, it's like, it gets frustrating because it's like, I'm on this journey. Like, of course, my stomach and like my senses want to eat that fried chicken. Like, duh, that's what I grew up on. Of course, when I see it, my instinct is yes. And I had to get to a place where when people would say, because it used to kill me when be like, oh yeah, you can't eat that. You can't eat that. And I got to a place where I was like, okay, you know what? Instead of being like, that's right, I can't. Or trying to, I think a lot of times, like, your first defense is to, like, shame it. Like, well, yeah, you're eating those body parts. Or you're eating, like, you try to, like, give them that picture, which is fine. It works sometimes, whatever. But for me, it was better for me to say, no, it's not that I can't. It's just I won't. And, like, I started to counter
just
it with that. Just because
you're having beef doesn't mean that we both have to have beef.
Yes, ain't no beef. Yeah, quit beefing with vegans. But, yeah, so it really turned into that thing that was, like, it doesn't... and I think that like showed people like it's really just a choice. Like, I think it's like we have to kind of like you said, bring it down, or exactly. And so it's like, no, it's not that I can't, it's just that I won't. And I really don't care if you do eat it. Like, it's to me.
But no, you're right though. A lot of people do put so much politics on it that it spoils it for other people. Like me the other day, I told somebody something and they totally missed the irony of the joke. And I'm like, because I said, yo, because I saw them watching this show, the Santa Clarita Diet, Drew Barrymore, right?
Yeah.
She's like a flesh-eating zombie.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I seen that show. You know what's funny is she's a vegan in real life. He's like, everything doesn't have to be vegan, this vegan. I'm like, dude, you're missing the joke. I'm like, there's irony. There's a joke here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was just like, I was just like, oh man, you automatically want to jump to that when I wasn't even coming at you like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like a lot of times, I don't know if people realized that it's hard on us too, just like it's hard on people that are not open to experiencing that. That it's also hard for people that are trying to stay open to continuing to experience that. It works both ways.
And I think too, like, if we gonna get real dirty, because you know I love to. It's a lot of it has to do with just the social constructs of who has been deemed